Hello everyone, and welcome to Wheel of History, and to Svoboda 1945. This is a really cool game. I'm really excited to be able to share it. It's not super long, it's only a couple hours, but one of those games that does a lot in not a whole lot of time. There we go. So, this was made by Charles Games, a Czech company that worked with Národní Archiv and actually the several universities. Where is it? Was developed by Charles Games in contemporation with the Institute of Contemporary History of the Czech Academy of Sciences. Further support from Karlova Univerzita, Academy of Sciences of the Czech Republic, Technology Agency, and the Czech Ministry of Culture, which includes the National Archive, Národní archiv. Fabulous. Big fan. So, right, this falls into, I guess, the same style of history game as, like, Valiant Hearts, where it's developed with support from the government about the time period and is built to be explicitly educational. But as you can see, there's an awful lot of real people. Hang on, let's turn that this way? This way. There we go. So this game is almost entirely FMVs, which is not a common choice these days. But I think, in my opinion, it's super successful. In my opinion, it's actually extremely successful at making the time period feel more real. And doing a better job of connecting then to now. But it's just such a different choice than pretty much any other game so far. Ooh, and thank you, Plus00312 for the follow just now. I appreciate that. So, the last disclaimer before we hop in is that I did play this game pre-release. They had sent me a copy to help proofread and do like a final test of the game. So, I have it has since gone the full release, and that's what we're playing today. But just so you guys are aware, I did have contact with developers before release of the game. They're cool people. And they made a very good game. Characters and stories in this game are fictional, but they are based on archived testimonies and real historical events. So, this is a game about the Sudetenland crisis. So, in other words, the region of the Czech Republic that exists on the border with Germany. Prior to 1945, this was a primarily German-speaking area. After 1945, it rapidly stopped being. But the game is actually set in 2001. I was sent to Svoboda to survey a local schoolhouse. I discovered a village haunted by its past.
Ta škola dělá ve vesnici zlou krev. Lidi nezajímá to, co bylo před 50 rokama. Lidi zajímá to, co bude zítra. Každý z místních měl možnost rozhodnout se, jestli chce jít se vsi nebo proti ní. A kdo šel proti vsi, ten musel počítat s následkami.
Obecná škola. The parts that aren't FMVs are this style of animation, which is also excellent.
Ve škole zastřelili mýho bratra. To vám pan Studnička neřekl, že byl u toho 8. května 45?
Pamatuju si, že teta si směla zabalit jen to nejnutnější. Kufry nesměly vážit víc než 50 kilo a balila je pod dohledem českých vojáků.
I'm haunted by everything I've learned about Svoboda and my family, but I have to finish my work. Two days earlier. So, this is the This region of the Czech Republic is known these days, and actually back then too, primarily for hops. So there's a lot of grain being produced and a lot of beer being produced. Anyway, and that'll become relevant later in the game. You work for the Heritage Institute. Mr. Studniczka, a local historian from Svoboda, is seeking landmark status for a schoolhouse. Investigate the school and its history to approve or deny his request.
Dobrý den, tady Nováková starostka, kde jste? Jeďte rovnou ke škole, pan Vlk už tam na vás čeká. Až doděláte ten stavební průzkum, tak se stavte za mnou, ať to dorazíme. Naschledanou.
And here we go. You can see, pretty, honestly, in many ways, stereotypical rural Czech village. I've gotten to go to the Czech Republic a bunch of times, mostly just in the Prague area, but this all feels and looks incredibly familiar, even just to me.
Ale jo, foťte si, co chcete. Začneme na půdě. Já si tam stejně musím něco vzít. Pojďte.
Hey. So, we get to look around. This is... The sections that are not animated are pretty much all point-and-click adventures.
Tam se nedostanete. To si dávno zamknul, klepal. To jsou kluci z jednotky. Nikdo z nich už nežije.
Incredibly worn out place. Look at it. Also spooky music. It's a great name. Really good name.
Za války se sem prý Němci z Reichu jezdili rekreovat. Chovali se tu jako panská rasa. Za to Češi pro ně byli pod lidi.
Also, this is a postcard from the archive, isn't it? This one's real, I think. But, absolutely, like, I'll freely admit, this game knows this time period better than I do. By a lot.
Toho jsem si nikdy nevšiml. Kdo ví, jak dlouho to tu je?
Random key. And... Květen 1946. Hey! The 14-month Prime sub, Leander. Thank you so much. Little slingshot, old jacket. Don't know when that's from. Some of this stuff they claim hasn't been moved since the 1940s.
Vyseli dole ve třídách.
Random people.
Krov je asi původní, ten nikdo neměnil. Prý se na něm oběsil nějaký Němec, co nechtěl do odsunu.
And Grim. Unfortunately, right, this one is something that happened with tragic frequency. One of my friends, at risk of sharing family history, who told me of one of her great-grandparents, I think. No. Sibling of a great-grandparent? Some relative, anyway. Who she and her husband did commit suicide in this expulsion rather than face having to leave and move to Germany. So, it is, unfortunately, absolutely a plausible thing for an old schoolhouse to be the site of one of those events. It's a dark period. This is a really dark period, and as you can see, throughout the game, everyone is still really affected by that
V
trauma.
té jsem byl u Dukly s generálem Svobodou. To byli jatka. Šli jsme proti Němcům skoro bez munice. Tak tuhle bednu jsem snad nikdy neotevřel. Ta tu asi zůstala po Němcích.
So this guy is apparently our grandfather. Spooky.
Tak? To nevím. To tam zřejmě leželo od války. Ale zeptejte se studničky, bydlí vedle. A chtěl s váma stejně mluvit o té demolici. To nevíte? To se tady bude bourat všechno. To dostane Klepal. No ten si to tady chce zbourat a postavit a rozšířit tady svoji firmu. A starostka mu to samozřejmě prodá. Učitel Studnička, ten by z toho rád udělal pamětní místnost. Ale snaží se o to už strašně dlouho a nic. Toho si ten návrh na památku, to je jeho další pokus, jenom jak tu školu zachránit. Mně to je jedno. Já už tady dlouho nebudu a i kdyby, tak co nadělám, to je všechno dávno domluvený. Promiňte, mám ještě práci. Já vás doprovodím, pojďte. Pojďte.
I will freely admit, despite how dark this time period is, there is something really joyful about hearing these folks talk. Because, I mean, Czech has a lot of memories for me.
Hledáte někoho?
My visits to the Czech Republic were really good, so...
Tady narodila za války. Teď to tu vypadá úplně jinak. Tam za těmi okny jsme bydleli. Můj tata tady dělal ve škole ředitele.
No a co? Chcete se sem vrátit?
Ne, já bydlím už mnoho let v Německu. Chtěla jsem to tady jen ukázat mojí vnučce.
Fabulous.
Teď si ještě potřebujeme ubytovat. Kde tady, prosím vás, je ten penzion?
Aj dolů a doprava.
Děkuji. Zatím nashledanou.
Nashledanou.
Kom?
No, it's great. Talk to people from Svoboda to learn as much as you can about the history of the school and figure out what your grandpa was doing in the village. You can visit different characters by clicking their portraits on the map, and you're going to view key memories linked to different sites of memory around Svoboda. So, as we zoom out here, we have Alois Klepal, Josef Studniczka, Jan Vilk, Anna Gröschel, or we could call her mother. And you're told to talk to Studniczka. And the school building here are these two budded together. So Vilk lives in one half, Studniczka lives in the other half. And this is what's up for demolition.
Dobrý den. 100 těch památkářů, že? Tak to je naše škola. Co jí říkáte? Starostka ji chce prodat Klepalovi. To je jeden takový místní podnikatel. A ten ji nechá zbourat. To by byla škoda, ne? Vy jste naše jediná záchrana, musí získat status památky. Pojďte dál, moc mě zajímá, co na to řeknete. Možná není cenný architektonicky, ale je cenný historicky. Tím domem procházejí dějiny 20. století a když teď dopustíme jeho zbourání, zničíme si tím kus své historie. Ano, tady ve 20. letech vznikla česká škola, takže já jsem začal chodit do české školy, ale pak přišli Němci a zabrali ji pro sebe, takže já jsem pak chodil do stejné budovy, ale do německé školy, celou válku.
I'm curious what you think here, because this is one of those very weird edge cases. One of my professional specializations is memory studies, right? I think if you're in the Discord, which if one of the mods could drop a link to that, that would be cool. You know, I've talked a lot recently about the about memory studies and cultural memory and the idea of sort of the ways that that's different from history, right? The idea of the stories we imagine about ourselves and monuments as sort of a tool of that. So this is kind of one of those weird edge cases. So I'm curious to get your guys' thoughts of would tearing down an old building that was used...
Ano, škola a pak taky klubovna Hitlerovy mládeže. My Češi jsme nic takového neměli. No a ke konci války jsem začali dávat Němce z východu, jak se stahovali, jak šla fronta. No a to už jsme se pak neučili vůbec.
So, a place that was used throughout that time period, right? In continuous use throughout the entire 20th century, for a whole lot of important things from the 1920s through to the 1960s or so. Would tearing that down be actually destroying history, given that all the material would be kept, right? Studnička has all the old books, and the village chronicle, and lots of other material, and the photographs are preserved, so is tearing down the building itself destroying history?
Na konci války dost mlelo, to jste slyšel. Bombardování, tady táhly kolony uprchlíků, šly tady taky pochody smrti. No a pak se tady začali stahovat Němci, civilisti i vojáci, kteří utíkali před Rusama. Vlastně to bylo nebezpečnější než za celé války. A my kluci jsme byli dost pitomí.
Boom. Comic time. Hooray! The war is over! Örökségre. Long live Czechoslovakia. Long live the Republic, long live the President. The President that they're mentioning here was actually the President before the Nazi annexation. So he was the first President of the post-war Republic, was the same guy as the last President of the pre-war Republic, for a nice little bit of continuity. Sadly then, the Communist Party staged a coup. Yeah, my German pronunciation is not very good. Thanks. I know. I can never remember when it's supposed to be an O and when it's supposed to be an umlaut.
Jo, pro nic za nic. 10letýho kluka. Když vám před očima zabijou kamaráda, tak na to nikdy nezapomenete. Bachková mi to taky nikdy neodpustila. Byl jsem o něco starší a ona si myslela, že jsem ho k tomu navedla, že za to vlastně můžu já. Promiňte, nechce se mi o tom moc mluvit. Nejdřív se tady ubytovali ruský vojáci. Vždycky si na zahradě opékali co kde sehnali. My kluci jsme sem rádi chodili, vždycky nám něco dali. No a pak se tady ubytovaly ty revoluční gardy. V jedné třídě ukládali cennosti po Němcích. No a pak se tady postupně začalo i vyučovat. A tohle všechno mám zdokumentovaný.
So, let's go see these documents, and then we'll talk about the, they'll provide valuable historical context, though reading them is not required to complete the game. We're gonna read them, but then, I was highlighting in the top corner here, there was a little pop-up. Right, there was that little pop-up. We'll come back to that as soon as I finish with these documents, but there's a lot of them. Jatetz, 1952. Regional National Committee, the Department for Trade and Nutrition in Jatetz, recognizes on the basis of proceedings conducted pursuant to Act No. 85, 1950, Collective on Administrative Criminal Proceedings as follows. Josip Vachek, employment farmer, address Svoboda, apartment number 11, district Jatetz, is guilty of failing to supply 174.5 kilograms of beef and 2,004 liters of milk for public supply in 1950, which endangers and hampers the supply of the population. Thereby, he has committed an offense under Section 88, Paragraph 1 of the Criminal Code, Administrative Number 8, 1930, and shall be punished pursuant to the same provision by a fine of 20,000 České koruny in favor of the state treasury. In the event that the fine remains unpaid, an alternative sentence of imprisonment of 74 days shall be provided. So, he didn't meet his quotas, therefore, he is being fined 20,000 crowns, or 74 days in jail. To the local national committee, the below signed František Platanik hereby requests the local national committee in Svoboda the allocation of the following pieces of furniture following the expulsion of the German churn from apartment number 86. 2 wardrobes, 2 beds with nightstands, a toilet, a sofa, and an upholstered chair. Subject, August 21st, 1945, ordering German women and children to harvest hops, 2 local national committees and administrative commissions. In order to successfully carry out this year's hop harvest, it is necessary, in the absence of Czech combers, to use about 50,000 to 60,000 German women and children over the age of 14. They will be employed for 4 weeks, mostly in the Žatec district. An inventory of persons of German nationality needed and capable for this work, if available in the local administrative district, will be made by the district labor protection offices with your cooperation and with the assistance of the National Security Corps headquarters. Persons selected will be transported to the place of work in special trains, or in the case of smaller groups, in special carriages under the supervision of members of the National Security Corps and the authorities of the district labor protection offices. On behalf of the District Commission Administrators in Žatec, Ingrid Karlik Vera. Ooh, Chad is having a juicy conversation. So, Sacritus, I'd like to think about, it's about the fact that we don't even know yet what methods and materials the historians of the future will use, so what may seem like all preserved to us would be woefully incomplete. So, that's at least how you feel about the culling of archives and tearing down of historical buildings that has happened. The past people never imagined I would need to use is in the stuff that, was destroyed. And unfortunately, right, I'm now in an archives training program, so, right, I totally sympathize, and while archivists need to make those decisions because you can't keep everything, it is pretty unlucky. So KJ, yep, the 1950 finding is after the coup, where the Communist Party becomes the only party, because originally they pretended, very happily, that, it wasn't going to be too bad, but they were just a party in an otherwise democratic system, and it was all going to be fine. And then they staged the coup and forced the resigning of a whole bunch of people. It was not great. So, well, they talk about this in the game. And actually, there's a whole mini-game around those fines. So it'll be cool to see. Havskamers in Váchec.
Jistě víte, že po vzniku Československé republiky proběhla pozemková reforma. Takže velkostatek rozdělili a jeden ze zbytkových statků dostal starý Vachek. Snad za to, že byl legionářem. Pěstoval hlavně chmel.
So, Váchec was apparently a World War I vet who, after the breakup of the landed elite in Czechoslovakia, got an estate. Congratulations.
Z bývalé správní budovy se stala česká škola. Předtím tu byla jenom německá. Československý stát měl samozřejmě zájem na počešťování německých oblastí a prvořadé pro něj bylo zakládání českých škol. Němci proti tomu protestovali, že prý pro těch pár českých dětí to nemá cenu, ale nakonec tu vznikla škola i školka.
Such a pretty language. Right, kindergarten is just školka, it's a little school. It's a tiny school.
Dům byl původně ještě před první světovou válkou správní budovou velkostatku a ten vlastnili Schwarzenberkové. Správce tam dělal pan Hein.
So those are early history, and then
V Žatci bylo několik velkých předvolebních shromáždění SDP.
look at the little touches they're doing. The little pencil lines, comic firing, and archive photo.
Vzpomínám si,
Great, such good
zrovna se
style.
tam sešli, když jsme byli navštívit příbuzné. Tenkrát jsme se raději náměstí vyhnuli velkým obloukem, to už bylo ostrach. Anšlusem Rakouska se to pak ještě vystupňovalo a občas došlo k různým potýčkám i tady na venkově.
Pro-Heinlein propaganda.
Když přišla hospodářská krize, začali být Němci nespokojení a když se objevil Henlein, tak je všechny úplně pobláznil.
And
Vojáky Wehrmachtu Němci nadšeně vítali, za to my Češi jsme raději vůbec nevycházeli.
Czech continues to have an excellent talk. Yeah, Sacerdos, I'm definitely not saying, right, accusing you of anything, but yeah, it's a fair answer to a rhetorical question that preserving as much as we can be super duper useful.
Českou školu si zabrali Němci, protože byla novější a lepší než ta jejich. Naši učitelé museli odejít do vnitrozemí. Tak jsem nastoupil do německé školy. Řídícím se stal Jánský, Němec ze Žatce, který jsem přišel i s rodinou.
And soup.
Němečtí vojáci se ubytovali ve škole a před ní zřídili polní kuchyň. Spousta Čechů z pohraničí odešla, buď přišli o práci jako státní zaměstnanci, nebo ze strachu. Odešly i některé židovské rodiny.
Fabulous. And let's see. Red Army soldiers. Nope. Fine. These Red Army soldiers.
Vojáci. Ti tu ale byli jen krátce.
Uncle
To
Eugene.
je revoluční povstalecká jednotka, která přišla z Loun.
And
Ve škole si zřídili taky klubovnu Hitlerjugend nebo ty Jugendvolk a svaz německých dívek. My Češi jsme nic takového neměli. Scout i Sokol Němci zrušili.
And there's that. That's all the pages. So this basically just goes through the end of World War II with the Red Army, quote-unquote, liberation. But then, we're not going to read all of it because there's a lot of pages. But we might come back and visit some of this as we work our way through the game to the various parts. But I just want to shout out the quiet illumination tradition being preserved here and here and here. It's very good. And these little town chronicles are some of my favorite things to be able to work with, because they record things that lots of other bigger chronicles don't, and they're so cool. They're just so cool. Anyway, there was something else I wanted to look at, and that is this. As we proceed through the game, we get encyclopedia entries. Source: Narodny Filmový archiv. The Sudety, or Sudetenland, is a word of ancient Celtic origin. Its exact meaning is unclear, but has something to do with the forests that until today remain a hallmark of the Czech borderlands. The meaning of the term Sudetenland as a territory has shifted over time. It was originally a small geographic region bordering the Czech lands and Germany along the Krkonoše-Jesenicki mountain system. At the end of 1918, Sudetenland was a short-lived separatist province creating the borderlands of the Czech lands, whose German residents opposed incorporation into Czechoslovakia after the Austro-Hungarian collapse in 1918, instead petitioned to join Germany or Austria. This province roughly encapsulated the area of the Jesenicki Mountains on the northern border of Moravia, so down here. Beginning in the 1930s, the term Sudetenland was expanded to include all border territories. In the Czech lands that were inhabited by a large German minority, so all across here. And then was the area associated to Nazi Germany. And then a territorial administrative unit that was directly incorporated into the Reich, with a capital in Liberec, or Reichenberg. And so they've got entries for everything, and just as a small shout out, I want to appreciate that they're sourcing their archival photos. Right, there's lots of games that will derive things from them and other media that will just use the photos. But it's always a really good sign when they are putting in doing due diligence on their image rights, and they're actually telling us where they are from. Narodny archiv, Narodny Filmový archiv, Statny Okresny archiv Loni. Fabulous. And so we'll get a whole bunch of these throughout the game. If you want me to look at any of them, just let me know. Otherwise, we're just going to leave them sort of to the side here.
Dobrý den. Hledáte někoho? No, moje vnučka si někam odběhla, ale proč ne? Pojďte dál. Tak, co byste si přál? To mi nic neříká. To není možné, to jste tu našel? No to je celá naše rodina.
Jo.
Táta, maminka, já a můj starší bratr Rudolf. O tom vůbec nevím, co se s ním po válce stalo. Naše krátce na to odvezli s několika dalšími Němci z vesnice, neznámo kam. Teta potom zkoušela z Německa zjistit nějaké podrobnosti, ale nezjistila vůbec nic. Takže to s nimi asi nedopadlo dobře. No to je přece Rudolf. Úplně jsem zapomněla, jak vypadá. No tak to muselo být těsně po válce, kdy se tady tyhle lidi objevili. No, potřebovali si vbít vztek na sudetských Němcích, kteří tady ještě zbyli, což byli starci, ženy a děti. Že? Řekla bych, že tu fotku fotil můj bratr Rudolf. Byl focením přímo posedlý, ale toho člověka neznám, nikdy jsem ho neviděl. Prosím vás, nemohla bych si ty fotky nechat? Je to pro mě velká vzácnost. Děkuju. Pořád se mluvilo o příchodu Rusů. Lidé si přáli, aby válka konečně skončila, ale o ruských vojácích kolovaly hrozné historky. Když se fronta přiblížila, tak jsem byla zrovna u tety, ta mě vzala a ještě s několika dalšími ženami jsme se schovali v jedné stodole. Všechny se hrozně báli, co bude. Ne, nás odsunula až československá armáda na jaře 1946.
So Leander, you mentioned the
Pamatuju si, že teta si směla zabalit jen to nejnutnější.
still talking.
Kufry nesměly vážit víc než 50 kilo a balila je pod dohledem českých vojáků. Já si nejvíc vzpomínám na to, že jsem se pořád ptala na rodiče. Teta říkala, že už se s nimi brzy setkáme. Muselo to pro ně být hrozné.
And now we get a game. We received a notice that we were being relocated to Germany together with instructions on what to bring and what we had to leave behind. Aunt Helga tried her best to pack necessities for herself and 2 children. This is to inform you that your entire family will be relocated to the German Reich. You are to report with all your family members at the assembly point on the day and time of evacuation, yet to be announced, will you hand in this notice of relocation, all keys to your abode, a list of all furnishings and furniture, all valuables. Before leaving your abode, you are to properly secure all windows, the gas supply, water supply, power supply against potential damages. Lock the door and tape over the keyhole with a sticker labeled with your family name. All evacuated persons are to equip themselves with warm underwear, outerwear, footwear, blanket wear, and a supply of food for 7 to 9 days. Furthermore, evacuees are permitted to bring wedding bands, small keepsakes, and articles of daily use weighing up to 50 kilograms per person. It is forbidden to take any Czechoslovak banknotes or money, foreign currency, or money out of the country. Non-compliance with these instructions, as well as any withheld or stolen property of any kind, will result in severe criminal sanctions. This is real grim, I won't lie. But Leander, you mentioned, right, your history teacher having lived through this and fleeing towards the American army against the fear of the Red Army, and the game just hinted towards the same thing, right? That there is... Hey, be patient, I'm talking here. Dang. Fur coats are too fancy, apparently. Pack those. There were a lot of rumors, not all of which were substantiated, but many of them were, unfortunately, of the brutality of the Red Army toward Germans and of Czechoslovak volunteers, or the bank books were forbidden. Okay, they took sweets. Pack those for sure. The Hitler uniform belongs to my nephew. Compulsory to join, but he enjoyed it. Yep, the stripes and pipes and marching through the streets. Don't do that. Back. Just the pillow because there was no space left. Common toys were allowed. Aw. So yeah, I mean, they would flee. Both soldiers and civilians would flee towards the US Army, because the US Army was better to prisoners of war. Take some medicine, yes. Traded the cloth for a coat, and you still lost it. Boo. Is there anything left in here? I want to take the scarf, to be honest, but that's okay. Left all the valuables at home. And, having packed up, you get Anna and her cousin and her aunt. Oh no, cat. No animals, but look at how cute the cat is. It's my kitty. And Valdi must stay here. Aww. Aww. No. Rude. Aww.
Odváželi nás na nákladních autech, byla tam spousta lidí mezi nimi, hodně starých. Jedna paní dokonce nedokázala udržet moč, takže ji museli často posazovat na nočník. Pak nás přivezli do tábora, každého si zapsali, zkontrolovali doklady, a potom provedli osobní prohlídku, takže nám sebrali veškeré cennosti a šperky, které teta tak pečlivě zabalila, abychom měli v Německu něco do začátku. V Německu byla v té době strašná bída.
Yeah, not a great time to be moving to
Sovětské
Germany.
Němce považovali místní za přítěž. Říkali nám Rucksack Deutsche, přivandrovalci. Taky děti dokázaly být velice kruté. Trvalo dlouho, než mě vzali mezi sebe a přestali se mi posmívat, že nemám svačinu, že mám jen jedny šaty a divnou výslovnost. Já jsem o návratu nikdy neuvažovala. Ale vím, že někteří starší lidé by se chtěli vrátit, toužili potom. Vím, že máte ještě nějaká jednání, nebudu vás déle zdržovat. S vnučkou bych se taky ráda podívala po vesnici. Nashledanou.
Okay, we got a whole bunch of things here. We have little sticky notes of a whole bunch of stuff. And each place that has a lot of memories gets a little spot. Nokia later.
Ahoj. Prosím tě, co by tam dělala dědova fotka? To bude asi někdo jiný. No to fakt nevím. Děda teda byl u nějakých gardistů, u žadce, který to tam po válce pomáhali zajišťovat. Potom vypravoval.
Oh, definitely, yeah. It's not a good time.
Vědět a dávej na sebe pozor.
Right, there's a number of recorded massacres of German civilians in the Sudetenland committed by Czech troops coming from inland in 1945. Definitely, there's a lot. Right, this is not a messy time period, and this game doesn't shy away from the messiness. Jan Vilk was part of the army coming in. His family lived in the Ukraine, but he signed up in the Red Army, was resettled in the Sudetenland, so he was part of that army. Studnishka was just a child, but it's implied but never stated that Anna Groshel's parents were killed in the expulsions. So the game isn't... Well, it keeps the focus limited, right? A handful of people. I think there's only a couple characters that aren't shown here. The mayor, Rudolph, a couple other people. But with just a handful of characters, it doesn't shy away from a whole lot of this. It is super duper good, yeah. Let's see if Klepa will talk. I am really a fan of this, and yeah, I think, right, that's something this game does super well. I think the fact that it's an FMV,
Co vy jste zač? Nikam nepolezete. Mám tam věci, bez dozoru vás tam nepustí. A já sám nemám čas. Nestrkejte nos do toho, co je jasný, ta škola musí pryč. A jestli chcete někomu pomáhat, tak zachraňte kostel, farář vás rád uvidí.
Thank you. Extremely helpful. Anyway. Right. The fact that they are doing this almost full FMV, obviously stylized sometimes with this comic book style, but for the most part going full FMV, real actors playing these characters.
Co by vás ještě zajímalo?
It ends up really driving home.
Ano, tam jsem bojoval.
How close all of this is?
Důležitá operace na pomoc slovenskému národnímu povstání. Ale ho to vypeklo. Němci se zakopali v horách a my jsme byli vysíleni už. Až to trvalo několik dnů.
There are people alive that lived through all this. Some of you in chat here, I see your grandparents, people I know, those relatives, are all witnesses to these events, or in some rare cases, participants of them.
Já jsem se narodil v Českém Straklově na Volhyni.
And so making that all live action with people of almost the right age really drives home just how recent this history is. It's easy to distance yourself from it. Right? It's easy to think of World War II as someone distant. But obviously it's not. And so, just huge props for the stylistic choice of using FMVs here. It's just not a common choice I see these days in historical game spaces, but is one that is hugely effective.
Carská vláda zvala přistěhovalce, a velmi levně jim pronajímala půdu, aby tam zakládali svoje samosprávy a školy a spolky. Generace mých prarodičů založila několik vesnic. Nejznámější je Český Malý. Ne. V Rovnu jsem nastoupil přímo do Rudé armády, ale za pár dnů se objevil u pluku československý důstojník, tak můj velitel nás nechal nastoupit a velel Čechy, Slováky, 4, šága, period, marš. Byla nás většina. A tak byli jsme rádi, že jsme nastoupili do československé armády. Byli jsme všichni vlastenci. A za čas taky navíc se začalo povídat, že se možná vrátíme do Československa. No, měl jsem takový sen, že se jednou snad podívám do Prahy, že začnu studovat nebo se někde v Čechách usadím. Jen ze Straklova vstoupilo do armády 90 mužů a žen. Bylo nás celkem 11 000 voliňáků, kteří vstoupili do sboru generála Svobody. Většina z nás šla do 3. československé samostatné brigády. A tam byli už staří chlapi nad 55 let, byli to naši tatíci, kteří bojovali v první světové válce a někteří za chrabrost dostali medaili, ruskou medaili svatého Jiří. Ale jinak rukovali 17letí kluci i ženy. No, mě jako neskušenýho kluka dali ke spojařům. A tam to bylo rozhodně lepší než u samopalníků. A ti nejlepší vojáci ti byli potom zařazení do parabrigády a na Slovensko byli poslani letecky, aby pomáhali slovenskému národnímu povstání. No, my jsme se tam měli probojovat potom po zemi přes Dukelský průsmyk. Jestli vám to něco říká. No, já teda nevím, co se teď učí ve škole, ale ani já, ani nikdo z chlapů, kteří jsme tím peklem prošli, toho nikdy nelitovali. Slováci povstali, no tak jsme jim museli přijít na pomoc.
Dukla Pass, which is on the border of Slovakia and the Ukraine. We need a radio connection with the 8th company behind that tree line. Is that clear? Go, 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 go. Run! Slovakia and Poland? Oh. Oops. Thank you for the correction, Riley. We're right behind that ridge. And they crawl over there. So they get a radio comm line. And regardless, basically what happened here is when Slovakia had an uprising, the Red Army paratroop support units, but the Nazi government found out about the uprising just before it was going to go off, right? And so their plan just got incredibly rushed. They had to do it a few days earlier than they wanted to, which kind of screwed up everything. So the meetup at the Dukla Pass really didn't happen the way that it was supposed to, and it was turned into a very, very messy battle. Do we... Chat, what do you think we should do with it? Sending it to Moscow. Anyway, meanwhile, Leander did say, an interesting thing I have the impression of this game that also shows deciding what is historical and what isn't is actually really bloody hard. Because even there are multiple places that are connected with various events. It's not just the school. And you can't preserve all of them. It's super true. And another choice that's just so clever about this game is setting the main action of the game in 2001, you know, decades after the events the game is actually talking about, is just brilliant. Because you're not having to simulate the time period, you're not having to do reconstruction work. You're effectively setting it in a recent enough past that you can use that you can very easily reconstruct it. You know, there's a little bit of difference because you're pre-dominance of the internet, so you're still doing it through old-timey methods, and I mean you're still doing that in the modern day with field work, but just old enough that you don't get all the convenience of being able to Google stuff to learn about it. But it's still recent enough that you can still use all present material, still use real actors, and not have it feel like reenactors. That's just set in a time period. And it is great. It is great. And yeah, all stories in the game concerning the war are based on archival material only mixed together and reconcentrated, which is brilliant. I know you guys worked super closely with Narodny Archive, and I mean so many of the posts from Narodny Filmy Archive, so big fan. Read? Yeah, okay. Chat split on read or delivers. Let's read it for... My dearest, I am alive and well. The last few days have been hard, but it will be better now. I have not heard from you for a long time. Please let me know that you are all well. I miss you very much. Kiss Nina and Shashenka for me. Your Nikolai. So now are we going to deliver that? One of those juicy choices. Also, just a simple scenario, but on a design level, the really eerie tones, right? The really eerie atonal music with the artillery shell sounds and gunfire in the background. Does such a good job on emulating the mind space of when you have to make a snap decision as to what the heck you're gonna do with this corpse now, formerly Nikolai, and his belongings. Right, because you can't simulate actually the danger of being in an artillery crater on a battlefield on the Polish border. Right, there's no actual way to emulate that when I'm sitting behind a computer talking to chat. But it gets some hint of the emotions, and it's the thing that historical games do that other... Right, that other entities don't. Right, a book doesn't have a soundtrack, you can't do that. You don't have to make a choice in a movie. So, just this one little scenario is just a really good bit of design for the thing I think historical games do super well, which is letting you enter the mental space of people in a different time period. For the most part, it does it through memory here. Really heavy focus on memory and what people want remembered, what people do remember, and the related question, of course, of what doesn't get remembered. But it just interweaves, right, lived memories with these comic sections, and abstraction and just clever visual and sound design, with just talking to people and hearing what they think, and getting you a sense of how these people are all different.
Slíbili nám, že kdo chce zůstat v republice, tak
It's
dostane
good.
zemědělskou usedlost po Němcích. Ale znáte to, slibem nezarmoutíš. Už v květnu 45 nám začínali tvrdit, že usedlosti pro hospodaření rodin bohužel nejsou k dispozici.
False marketing.
Zastával se nás jen generál Svoboda a ministerstvo obrany. No nakonec to skončilo kompromisem. Přidělili nám nějaký statky, ale hlavně si hlídali, aby se moc voliňáků neusadilo pohromadě v jedné vesnici.
No, Leander, that's not due to any of my judgments or changes on the settings. So that is just how it is.
No, já jsem samozřejmě musel jako všichni ostatní do 15 let zaplatit odhadní cenu toho statku. Byla určena nějaká sleva a taky trošku posunutá doba splatnosti. Ale já, než jsem všecko vyřídil, tak se na statku, který mi přidělili, už usadil někdo jiný.
And now we're back in Svoboda in 1945. Straight to the next village. And there we go. Someone has already moved into their farm. So hopefully doesn't cause any trouble. So this is an old a farm formerly owned by a German. And so, as was mentioned in the documents we saw earlier, German workers were used as sort of labor force. Delayed the expulsion to help out with harvests and farm work. And that's what's happening here. You have to leave, Platonik. Mr. Volkir's Bohemian check, he has priority. This goes over well. This goes over, we'll say well. Uh-huh. It's a government decision. Do you want to make trouble? Back to a finished job. Yeah. Nobody cares about all that. Now that's justice for you. Lots of resentment, lots of directions. Right, it's a problem. I've always voted for the People's Party. I'm undecided. I supported the Agrarian Party, but they've been banned. Perhaps the National Socialists, then. My friends, you know the Social Democrats mean the best for Svoboda. Nonsense, the Communists mean the best for us. I don't know, Franta. What don't you know? I'm telling you, we're better off with the Communists. I hear that they're seizing land to build collective farms. Nonsense. And even if they were, they'd be great for us. Ah, you love that double thing. We all help each other out during the harvest time anyway. What's the difference? The Bohemian should know about collective farms. He's a Soviet, after all. Hi, Jan. Oh, well. I worked in a collective farm. We worked together. We used tractors, that's all true, but The truth is also that they confiscated land from big landowners. And took them, God knows where. They simply vanished, and no one's heard from them since. That's immigrant bullshit. Don't believe a word he says. Uh-huh. Calm down, why don't we all play some cards? We're playing blackjack, folks. Nineteens are pretty good. Uh-huh. Ah, lame. I hear that they're sending us a new teacher from Prague. Anyone will be better than that German informant Jansky. Remember, that's Anna Grishel's father, is the German informant Jansky. You weren't here, so you wouldn't know. Jansky allegedly told the Gestapo that Klepal was a communist. Allegedly, my ass. And he also got what he deserved. Heyo, that was an ace. Next, you're gonna go over. No? Wow. Unlucky. That's a tie. So you can keep playing this for as long as you want, actually. You hear they almost ended up deporting the Heinz. What? But Sarah is Jewish. They're Germans, and they were almost taken away. But their grandson got an exception so they could stay. Can't make an omelet without cracking some eggs. One more round? So you get little bits of gossip about what's going on in the town here. And pretty much all of it should be lame every time. Every single time. Well, František Platonik. Maybe he can't tend in the bar, but he's still better than during the war. That wool was undrinkable. Uh-huh. Watery war beer. Hops and barley were a luxury. Bread was more important, I had to grow less. So... No, to headness, this is just a minigame. We're just getting bits of gossip. If it... 1946. We're in 1946. So... lame. Uh-huh. Imagine working as a bartender and not even knowing how to pour beer. The plumber replaced the carpenter took over a farmstead, and the butcher started tending the bar. What a mess. There's the rest of the game. Election Day, May 26th, 1946. Obecna Szkola is the polling site. So the old school here. The question of the building we're going to preserve is the polling site for this.
No tak řekl bych, tak 40 000 určitě. 40 000. Protože když jsme narokovali, tak na Volyni zůstali jen ženy, starci a děti. Zvořila tam občanská válka mezi Sověty a Benderovci. A navíc tam byla strašná hospodářská situace. Protože Sověti jako vždycky...
Bílá Košice, Tachranice, Praha, to Žátec.
Když byla v létě 640 podepsaná dohoda o přesídlení obyvatel, tak se většina Volyňáků rozhodla.
Unions decided to return to their old homeland.
Na 47. už to tady bylo úplně.
Things are not...
Na návratu Volyňáků si některé strany chtěli nahnat politické body. Takže třeba příjezd prvního transportu do Žatce, to byla veliká slova. Jak by taky ne, když nejlepší majetky po Němcích byly už rozebrané. Víte, my voliňáci jsme si Československo hodně idealizovali. Hlavně jsme nedokázali pochopit zdejší poválečnou víru, že Stalin to myslí se všemi slovanskými národy dobře.
Oof.
Volín nás naučil, jak strašný vztahy můžou být i mezi takzvanými slovanskými bratry.
Oof.
Promiňte, mám ještě práci. Já vás doprovodím, pojďte.
So, Tehedness, the game takes place in 2001. We are part of the National Historical Foundation. Oh, I'm trying to decide whether this old school building should be kept as a historic landmark because of its importance to the town in the period from its building in 1920 to about 1960. It particularly focuses on the Sudetenland expulsions from 1945 to 1948. Lyudmila Volokova. Village mayor, her family lost its farm due to collectivization.
Dobrý den. Pojďte. Co průzkum? Bože, zase pan Studnička. Ten si dost naivně představuje, že tady vybudují muzeum a že chlapi z vesnice tady budou snad dělat správce sbírek. Vidíte se, já z toho bourání taky nejsem nadšená. Jsem se konec konců narodila hned vedle školy na tom statku. Co má klepal teď firmu? A ve škole zemřel můj bratr. To vám asi pan Studnička neřekl, že?
So, at the beginning, when we saw...
Studnička. Bratrovi bylo 10 roků, když spolu šli vyvěšovat vlajku. Já myslím, že vůbec nevěděl, proč to dělá. Němci při tom vyvěšování bratra zastřelili. Máma se zhroutila a krátce po únoru 48 zemřela.
Seized power in February 1948.
No to bylo hrozný. Den po pohřbu mýho bratra se všichni shromáždili na náměstí před školou. No tam internovali místní Němce. Otec byl vzteky bez sebe, já jsem si myslela, že někoho zabije, jak byl vzteklej. Já se do dneška vybavuju to napětí a proto si myslím, že všichni ti kritici odsunu, myslím, že vůbec nic nechápou, protože nic z toho nezažili. 6 let jsme byli pro Němce pod lidi, tak to nějak muselo jít ven. Jestli chcete vědět něco víc, tak byste mohli jít za krejcarem. Ten tady prožil konec války jako voják. To je Rudolf Jánský. Jeho rodiče byli jako Němci odsunuti, mu se nějakým způsobem podařilo v Československu zůstat.
Another thing this game does super well is, right, each of these...
Otec nevěděl, o čem mluví. Občas se tady zjeví, přespává, Bůh ví kde.
Each of these characters has a super different perspective, you know. Gröchel as a victim of the expulsions. Mayor Novakova supporting them and saying, yeah, it really sucked. It really sucked to be Czech in World War II. And Studnička being friends with someone who died right at the end of World War II as a child who got shot by the Nazis. And Klepal, his father was reported as a communist informant by Gröchel's father. So it gives everyone this different perspective on the expulsions and whether or not they were a good thing, and really explores just how deep these wounds are in a very nice small way. Huge fan of it.
Protože ten statek, co má Klepal, patřil naší rodině. A jako kulácká dcerka jsem si užila svý, ale to spíš souvisí se starým Klepalem. Mladý s tím nemá nic společného. Pak proč to připomínat? Jeho firma ve vesnici funguje, ať už to bylo za revoluce jakkoliv. Ale tu starý Klepal, to je jiný kafe. Byl velký funkcionář.
The accusation was, you know, fair.
Uvalili na nás povinné státní odvody, bez ohledu teda na to, jaká byla
This game is
úroda.
great. Seriously,
Taky
go
nám
go buy this game.
zabavili
Support
zemědělský
Charles
stroje,
Games because they've
tam
done
si občas podali
something
do školy,
really
tlačili
special
na
here.
něho, aby vstoupil do družstva, tak to nechtěl. Stejně si myslím, že nejvíc se obával toho, že kdyby ho zavřeli, tak já skončím v nějakým útulku.
And now we get another minigame. My dad did all that he could to keep the farm going after the war. All farmers had to meet mandatory quotas on their crops or they'd be fined. We saw this in the ancillary documents that Studnishka had. You can buy wheat or hops. Hops have a higher yield but do not count towards the mandatory quotas. So, we have to buy one of those. And then you plant, and you plant. I don't want to move on to the next season though. I've got cash right now, so I need to buy up a hops field while I've got the cash for it. And then you harvest, and you harvest. And so we made our quota for the year. They confirmed we met all quotas this year.
Tátovi se začalo dařit a brzy měl největší hospodářství ve vsi. Na podzim nám na polích ještě pomáhali Němci.
We can also buy cows. Or buy tools. To see wheat by 1300, I don't have the cash for that. The grain processor, I can't afford to do that because then I don't get the right, I can't afford to buy this because then I can't plant these. If I don't plant, then I don't earn. So, next season. Spring of 1946. $26,000. Buy a grain processor. Check. I think I don't want to buy another cow this time. The communists won the 1946 election. They promised they wouldn't take anyone's land and people believed them. Sell some fields. Yeah, let's buy those. We can afford that. Plant, plant. And I can't afford to... Good. Milking the cow got me the hops to do that. Oh yeah. This was nearly bad, but I'm raking in the cash right now. Milk cow. We can buy the cow again. Can't afford the tractor, can't afford the hops dryer. But we will be able to buy, potentially, another field. Spring in 1948, there's the coup. Quotas will rise now that the communists are in power. We want a kulak to them, so, an independent farmer. So prepare for hard times. Milk the cow. We need to plant, we need to plant, we need to plant. I do have enough cash to buy another field. That's important, let's buy that. Almost bankrupted myself, but that gives us a bit of overflow. We weren't able to seed some of them that I needed to. I guess that was a problem. That was a problem. Not great. We're gonna get fined because I forgot to seed a place.
V naší vesnici komunisti založili JZD. Několik menších sedláků do něj vstoupilo, ale táta nechtěl.
Uh-huh. Why don't you want to join the collective? We'd all benefit from it. Plant, plant, cow, plant, plant, plant. That's all I can afford, but I have 4 fields. Actually, buy another cow. We'll keep the grain processor for the collective now. They just yoink my grain processor. So
jednou to šlo rád.
doing okay, but
Popravili generála Píku.
the General Pika and
Komunisti
Horokova,
likvidovali každého, kdo se jim postavil na odpor.
and the collective farm down here is going to start gobbling up everything. How much is the tractor? Yeah, they're gonna just steal it right away if I don't do that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I do meet the quota this year. 1950. I met the quota as long as I don't steal any of my... Sweet. Wait, what? 1, 2, 3. Oh, because that's hops. Boo. Oops. I got fined 5,000 kroner.
Vstoupil do družstva.
But
Říkal,
yep.
že dobrovolně, ale tátovi se pak v hospodě vyhýbal.
Well, this is gonna go bad. We'll see how that works out. Okay, if I want to meet quota, I literally cannot meet the quota, there isn't enough fields left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The best I can do is lose the quota by 2. No, I can afford to see that. Hang on. There we go. I only missed the quota by 1. Czechoslovakia had its own communist regime. Sort of. Sort of. So it kind of goes back and forth. Yep, they're gonna steal one of my fields. Because they can. There's nothing I can do about it. I'm gonna get fined fairly heavily. But I can still afford things. So, basically, after the coup... Stop it, Clap all. We all work together. Yeah, shush. Milk the cows. Plant. Still is gonna go poorly for us long term. We're doing okay though. We're still in 1952. Anyway. Yeah, that's the local Communist Party chairman. So after the coup in 1948, the Communist Party of the Czech Republic, or of Czechoslovakia, was nominally independent, but everyone in charge of it were really prominent proponents of Stalin. And so there was a huge statue of Stalin started on the north side of Prague until 1952, I think, if I remember correctly. 1952 was when it changed, and the new Communist Party chairman, and obviously Stalin's death, meant that... Don't quote me on those dates. Don't quote me on those dates, but it's somewhere in the earlier 50s. There's a regime change, or slight regime change, in that a different chairman takes over. Which is good, because the first Communist Party chairman... Oh, what's his name? What's his name? I need to look this up, because that's a big deal. Sorry. No, not Storch. There it is, Clement Gottwald. Clement Gottwald was the first one. A horrible person. Like, legit awful. Well, we're not gonna make the thing at all, but at least they didn't steal any more. I can at least afford the fines. Yeah, he dies in 53. The guy who replaces him is far less keen on Stalin. And so... the Czech Communist Party becomes gradually more independent over the following years, and actually becomes relatively liberal. Gottwald dies immediately after Stalin, actually, and it appears to be 32,000.
Začali dělat seznamy vesnických boháčů. Soudy je
Jeez.
posílali do vězení, někdy i na smrt.
We're not gonna. This is the last year, by the way. There's no way we make that. We don't have nearly the cash to make this. Even with the harvest, it's going to be like 48,000 korony, and we don't have that kind of cash. Well, it's going to be close. Nope, I only got fined 32,000.
Po Stalinovi
I'm doing great.
doufali, že se
After Stalin's death, people were hopeful that things would ease up a bit.
To tak i vypadalo.
Voila. And so, basically by the mid-1960s, the Czech communism in the Czech Republic looks totally different. And is actually quite liberal. Oh, well, rip our tractor. We can keep limping on until they take the hops field. Then we're going to hemorrhage real fast.
Tlak na sedláky se zase stupňoval. Vláda nařídila, že kdo nesplní povinné odvody, tomu
But
sebe.
unfortunately, in '68, they Soviet tanks rolled through Prague, and so things get real bad real fast. All the way through until the 80s, when the resistance movement really picks up. Oh yeah, they're just gonna... For non-compliance with state agricultural quotas, your farm was just confiscated. He gave in and joined the collective in 52. We made it to 55. Yep. Thank you, Riley. For the slight correction there. That the Gottwald's successor, Novotny, was individually a hardliner, but even so, the general vibe in Prague, and despite his attempts to push out people in the government pushing for less close ties with Moscow, it still culturally was Soviet communist Czechoslovakia was far and away the most liberal communist state, right? Of the whole of all the Soviet states, the Communist Party of the Czech Republic was the most liberal. It was pretty impressive. And then tanks roll through as Novotny gets ousted, and things get bad until folks like Václav Havel start leading the movements that would become the Velvet Revolution. So, huge underground culture movements in the 1980s. But, Havel got attacked by the secret police on multiple occasions. It was not a good time, but then, 100,000 people protesting in Prague, in Letna Square, if I'm remembering right. Most of what I know from this is having visited Prague, not from formal study, so my knowledge, I will freely admit my own limits on, but I believe it's Letna Square. And that resulted in the demolition of the communist regime. Shockingly. Bafflingly. It just worked. And then in 93, the Czech Republic and Slovakia break apart. Again, shockingly peaceful, shockingly effective. Like, there was some violence as Czechs and Slovaks had to switch what side of the border they were on, but relative compared to other attempts to draw arbitrary boundaries and then move people to other sides of the boundaries, cough India, Pakistan, Armenia, Azerbaijan, lots of cases of that. The Czech-Slovak separation was relatively mutual and relatively peaceful, and it's kind of remarkable. Oh. Sit down, Vahek. Let's get straight to the point. Yep, thank you. You won't sign anything. Look here, Vahek. You've got to sign it. This isn't as easy as you think. We all have our duties, our orders. You've got a daughter. What's best for her? And Volk has already signed too. Remember, Volk is a guy that we just walked past us, and one of the people that we talked to in this game. Besides, Klephal is after you. When the agricultural secretary is after you, anything could happen. This could very well be your last taste of freedom. Obecna szkola, and... Sorry for being late, I got held up on the way here. Do we have everyone? Vahek here isn't fully certain. Well, we can do this the hard way. Ominous music. You're packed, right? Oh yeah, super nasty. Klepal Sr. was a piece of work.
Nechali nás sice na tom statku bydlet, ale všechno už patřilo družstvu. No vidíte, jsem se tady rozpovídala, přitom o těch věcech vůbec nemluvím. Ani nikdo z vesnice se k tomu nechce vracet.
Absolutely no one around here has any desire to dwell about the past.
Restituovala. A v rámci těch tahanic kolem restitucí já jsem pomohla více lidem.
I'm going to click on this one. Right. Property restitution was a specific way of transforming ownership after 1989, during the transition from a socialist to a free market system. The goal of the laws was to mitigate some of the consequences of property injustice, since in many cases, complete compensation was simply not possible. Ultimately, among the many difficulties was the problem of providing ownership and the unwillingness of current owners to accommodate restitution claims. Agricultural property proved particularly complicated. Collectivization in its many forms led to various restitution claims being rejected or blocked. The restitution of church property, formally resolved in 2012, was also very complicated. Understatement. A little bit of an understatement there. The other thing I would note is that some people definitely benefited more than others, and were able to use restitution to help accumulate property. Like the current Prime Minister?
Měla štěstí, v 60. letech se doba trošku uvolnila a stigma kulecké dcerky nebylo až tak určující, takže navíc táta umřel, v družstvu byl, tak to šlo. Dostala jsem se na vysokou školu ekonomickou, samozřejmě ne na zahraniční obchod, a jsem se vrátila až v 80. letech, ale to je úplně jiná historie.
Don't call Czechoslovakia Eastern European. They are... I have gotten yelled at by multiple people for doing that. Central European. But Soviet bloc countries. Extremely...
No, to už bude 12 let.
Extremely unhappy past, to be sure. And a lot of collective trauma that still isn't really resolved.
Možná by vás zajímal hřbitov. Ten je velice známý. Kdybyste něco potřebovali, tak se stavte později. Nashledanou.
there's a bunch there. We have Greshel. There's Vahek's farmstead. School building, Volk's farmstead. Random curve on the road. So we could go talk to Klepal again. We could go to Studnička. Keep talking down to Greshel. Lots of options.
Zdravím, tak povídejte, jak pokračuje výzkum? Pojďte dál, probereme to hezky v teple.
Yeah.
To? No to bude nejspíš těsně po válce. Vidíte tu pásku? To bude patrně člen Národní stráže, nebo jak se jim tehdy říkalo, to víte. Vesnice byla německá a Němce bylo potřeba zajistit.
And it's another thing that's really good about this
rodina řídícího
game.
učitele Jánskýho. Němec to byl. Ti tady bydleli za války. Po válce byl i se ženou. V první vlně odsunu nevím, co se jim stalo, ale v každém případě nepřežili, to víte. Děli se tady i hrůzné věci.
The mascot, Apostle Perty.
Třeba mluví o zabíjení v Postoloprtech, o těch stovkách mrtvých Němců, anebo o zabíjení a mučení v Žatci.
A bad time.
No to je mladý Rudolf Jánský, syn řídícího učitele. Oni odsunuli oba rodiče, děti tady zůstaly u tety, ale Rudolf pak zdrhnul a tím se vyhnul odsunu a zůstal tady v Čechách. Vždyť jsem přece chodil do téhle školy. Učitele Jánskýho se každej bál. Byl to typický Němec a vyžadoval disciplínu a k tomu rád používal rákosku. Ale respekt si dokázal zjednat. Jenom na svýho syna byl krátkej. Ten pořád utíkal z domu, utíkal ze školy. Vždycky dostal nařezáno, ale pak stejně zdrhnul znova.
Funny, it's like that doesn't work. Anyway, right, one thing I find really interesting about this game
Přijďte, kdykoliv budete potřebovat.
is that I think it's a consequence partially of the FMV format. Right? This constant usage of real actors ends up really strongly linking, past and present. So this is the modern day sections of this are modern enough that we end up linking the two. Right? People talking about what they want and don't want to remember in the present tense. That current act. And so, right, the chat discussion got pretty political, or vaguely political, with the history and sort of the ongoing troubles with kind of reckoning with this past. That there are certainly efforts to do, and this game is one of those efforts. And remember, the Czech Ministry of Culture helped fund and assist with the development of this game. Right? It's super cool. But the design of the game really strongly links past and present and says that, these are the same conversation. These are the same conversations happening. Well, we frame them as two different ones, 1945 versus 2001. They're really the same issue, and the question of cultural heritage and the role of the archivist, which is, we work for the Heritage Institute instead of an archive, but Studnička is doing archival work, and we're doing monumentary work by questioning whether the school should be a historic landmark or not. A lot of it is coming from the National Film Archive, Tehednis, so Narodny Filmy Archiv, in Prague. So it's all genuine archival footage from the audiovisual archives that the Ministry of Culture runs, which is awesome. Huge fan. And by the way, Leander, right, that comment is super interesting, right? The particular FMV also works great because it highlights that the past segments aren't per se real, just remembered and imagined. It's funny because that's simultaneously really true and not at all true. Right? It's super true in that within the setting of the game, right? Within the setting of the game, we are playing through people's memories. But also, outside the setting of the game, all of these little games that we play, these little animated sections, mini-games, are all derived from actual archival material. Right? Condensed, remixed a bit, fictionalized slightly. Right? File off the serial numbers, but genuine archival material, and so they are real.
Pojďte dál, probereme to hezky v teple. Ano, tady jsem se narodil v roce 1930. Narodil, vyrůstal, pracoval a doufám, že tady i zemřu, a to v tomto bytě a ne v nějaké bytovce, jak by si přál pan Klepal. V té době to tady bylo hlavně německý, ale postupně sem přicházelo čím dál víc Čechů. Nebylo všechno ideální, ale lidé tady spolu žili, společná manželství a podobně. A pak se objevil Henlein a využil nespokojenost některých Němců s republikou a taky ty krize. Někteří si stěžovali, že je Češi utiskují a třeba taky na to, že české firmy dostávají státní zakázky, ale co přišlo potom, bylo daleko horší, nakonec i pro ty Němce. Spousta Čechů po zabrání Sudet odtud odešla, ale rodiče nechtěli opouštět hospodářství a taky nevěděli, kam by měli jít. Takových, co zůstali, bylo víc a nejenom ze smíšených rodin. Ano, rodiče pak optovali i pro české občanství, ale neměli jsme to lehký. Českou školu zavřeli, rodiče museli odvádět dodávky. Dokonce jednu dobu nám hrozilo, že nám Němci statek zabaví, ale zastal se nás starosta. Dobré na tom bylo to, že otec nemusel jít na frontu, což se zase ovšem nelíbilo některým Němcům, protože jim postupně začalo docházet, že německé občanství má i svoje nevýhody. No, ti, co neoptovali pro české občanství a žili tady delší dobu před válkou, se stali občany říše a chlapi pak museli za Němce do války. Ono se o tom pochopitelně moc nemluví, ale i takoví byli. Někteří se pak už nevrátili. Ale beze všeho přijďte, kdykoliv budete potřebovat.
I know, right, Tehednis, right, I do pre-modern stuff mostly. So, having, like, having actual archival video footage of not necessarily the exact same place, but similar things, right? I would kill for video footage. Can you imagine how much we'd learn if we had somehow the ability to get video footage from before the 20th century? Admittedly, I wouldn't want to deal I don't actually necessarily want to take, or I guess the better word would be envy. I don't necessarily actually envy 19th and 20th century historians, because it just swaps, right? Medieval material, we have 7 things and a bit of string in order to tie it all together, to reconstruct the entire time period. 20th century historians have like 15 million pages worth of documents. How do you deal with that many pages of stuff? And hundreds of hours of video footage? Like, how on earth do you actually make sure you've accounted for everything relevant? Right, even with archive training, it's just a practical reality of it all being so spread out. Right? They're all in several thousand different archives. How do you make sure you've done due diligence on actually getting all or enough of the relevant material in order to say, yeah, this is very likely to be a good abstraction of what happened. There's a lot of desperately hope you don't miss something, and then you do find something, and you create an entire career off of continuing to find things that you missed.
Ano, v roce 1939 můj otec byl ředitelem školy a měli jsme tady i byt. Tady jsem prožila tu hezčí část svého dětství. Po válce nás jako Němce vyhnali. Poslyšte, ale ta škola je v hrozném stavu. Měla by se opravit, co říkáte? Cože, zbourat? No to by mě velice mrzelo, vždyť jsem se tady narodila. No já myslím, že spousta lidí ze Sudet má pořád vztah k místům, odkud pocházejí. Myslím, že by se dala udělat mezi nimi sbírka na opravu školy, takhle už se zachránila spousta památek. No chtěla jsem se podívat na místo, kde jsem se narodila a na rodný dům a hlavně jsem chtěla to místo ukázat vnučce, protože později už by třeba nebyla příležitost. No já vím, asi jsem to měla udělat dřív, ale nějak pořád nebyl čas a vlastně možná ani odvaha. Teď se chci postarat aspoň o rodinný hrob, ten je v hrozném stavu. No tak je vidět, že se o obec po válce nikdo moc nestaral. Víte, takhle to dopadne vždycky, když lidé nemají vztah k místu ani k těm, kteří tam žili před nimi. No tak maminka byla sice Češka, ale táta byl Němec. A když se vzali, tak maminka automaticky získala německé občanství. Po válce ji brali jako Němku, jinak by ji neodvezli. Já jsem zůstala sama s německou tetou, takže nás po čase odvezli taky.
Mhm. Okay. Looks like we are getting closer. Let's call Mom again. Yeah. It's super rough.
Ahoj. Víš, že jsi měl pravdu? Prošla jsem dědovo album a fakt v té tvojí vesnici byl, ale už před válkou na česáních chmele.
Huh.
O tom nikdy nemluvil. Vždycky vyprávěl, že během povstání bojoval s nacistama. To ne, ale barvitě popisoval, jak Němci v nějaké vesnici zastřelili kluka jen proto, že vyvěsil z okna českou vlajku. To mně přišlo strašně.
Yep. Yep. So, confirmed, our grandfather was actually here. But unclear what he was actually doing. KJ, there are incredibly few archives that are resisting digitization efforts. Cause that's dumb. Especially, the last year has really proved an archive doesn't function without digitizing its collections. And there's still ways to control access, right? There's not... The bigger issue is that it is difficult, oftentimes, and expensive. And for a large archive, what do you do first? Right? And especially, let's use the classic example here. The Vatican Archive. Due to centuries of fairly shoddy cataloging work, let's be honest, it was bad. And several relocations of partial or total relocations of material, etc., 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 really long history. No one knows exactly what's in that archive. The archivists are trying, but there are literally centuries of material that you have to hunt down the provenance for in order to figure out where the heck it is, and sometimes that's a lost cause. There just isn't a provenance left. So, given that, how do you actually start digitizing that collection? You don't even know what's in it, right? You can obviously do the parts, start working on the parts that are well cataloged and that you do know what are in there, but the majority of that archive is not physically able to be digitized because steps have to happen first before scanning the material can happen. Right? So, before you can digitize something, you have to acquire it, process it, properly catalog it, and conserve it before you can do any use of it. And the conservation work for digitization is more intense than the conservation work for regular archival handling. And so if your catalog isn't accurate or complete, you can't create the database that you will then use as the central place for digitization. It's not just start scanning material in order and do it as you go, because that's not financially or logistically plausible. But there's a lot of archives that are in that situation, right? We're kind of spoiled by the British Library. The British Library is incredibly effective at digitizing their material. And they are kind of one of the standards that everyone else kind of aspires to. But the vast majority of archives aren't in a position to do that. And so it's not a matter of prestige, right? The Random Monastery Archive already has no prestige. There's nothing they can do. But it's a matter of logistics and finances.
Dobrý den. No to vůbec netuším. Omlouvám se, ale já mám ještě nějakou práci. Takže...
Thank you. Very helpful. Cool. Poof. Well, that gives us exactly one person left to talk to. Alois Kleppel. Yeah, cataloged and in stable condition to head this, yes.
Už jste tady zase? Podívejte, jaký to má smysl se v tom přehrabou. Škola za záchranu nestojí. A nějaký fotky na tom nic nezmění. A prosím vás, jakou historii máte na mysli? Tu, že se tu po Mnichově roztahovali Němci a lidi jako můj otec, kteří se jim postavili, končili v koncentrácích a na šibenicích? A teď tu bude nějaká sudeťačka šířit pomluvy a vykládat o tom, že odsun byl nespravedlnost.
Yeah, he has strong feelings.
Že někoho zabili, o tom já nic nevím. A víte, jak by to dopadlo, kdyby Němci vyhráli? Aby jsme tady všichni mluvili německy, anebo by jsme tady vůbec nebyli. Němci mohli být po válce ještě moc rádi. To před koncem války tady vězni po desítkách umírali při pochodech smrti. Moje matka vyprávěla, že tady SS-mani na konci války hnali zajatce a zavřeli je do stodoly.
Svoboda, April 1945. Grüß Gott. The district office already called us. We need to find you living quarters. We only have 2 empty barns to spare. For this many people. They leave early tomorrow. Oh boy. A slight content warning for this. There's a long road ahead of us.
Za jedinou noc jich 20 zemřelo a některý bezdůvodně zastřelili. Jestli chcete o Němcích něco vědět, tak se běžte podívat na hroby těch ubožáků. Tady na hřbitově. Prosím vás, kdo by sem jezdil za nějakou pamětní síní, ať se obec stará o ty, co tady pracují a žijou.
Let's keep talking to him.
O co vám jde? Tohle nemá nic společného se školou. Jo, jestli vám jde o to zabavení Vachkova statku, tak o to se s váma vůbec nebudu bavit. Každý z místních měl možnost rozhodnout se, jestli chce jít ze vsi nebo proti ní.
Yeah.
Kdo šel proti vsi, ten musel počítat s následkami.
Kaboom. Club Hall is locked up a wing of the school, won't let me access it. Club Hall doesn't know anything about the photos from the attic. Club Hall doesn't want to face the past. Club Hall doesn't want the school to be a reminder of Czech German history. According to Club Hall, people need work, not memorials. But now we unlocked a new person. Matyáš Krajcar. They do not hold back in this game.
Dobrý den. No já nevím, no. Asi vám s tím moc nepomůžu. No tak co, pojďte dál.
Aha.
No tak povídejte, co vás zajímá. Ale ne, to vás asi špatně informovali. Já jsem sloužil v obrněném vlaku Praha a my jsme odjeli do severního pohraničí hlídat vlastně železniční tratě. A já jsem přišel mnohem později, teprve když už byly rozpuštěny revoluční gardy a já jsem narukoval jako voják. Mm-hmm. No ten název vzniknul až po skončení pražského povstání. To nás reorganizovali a vytvořili několik pluků revolučních gard, z nichž některé zůstaly v Praze, ostatní odešly do pohraničí. No a to všecko ale trvalo jenom do konce června 1945, čili ne dlouho, a úkoly převzali potom Sbor národní bezpečnosti a Československá armáda. Asi jako každý. Prostě jsme slyšeli 5. května v poledne volání Českého rozhlasu o pomoc,
May
tak jsme se
1945.
tam přirozeně vydali. Ale už u Volšan jsme potkali jednotku, která odzbrojovala Němce, no tak jsme se taky přidali a za půl hodiny už jsme měli tolik zbraní, že jsme si mohli troufnout na německou posádku v reálném gymnáziu na náměstí Jiřího z Lobkovic.
The archival footage from this, I've got to see some of it before, is absolutely fascinating. Because May 1945, Prague sees the winds turning with the retreating German army and starts an uprising. And so you see, there's archival footage of civilians with little .22 hunting rifles posted up on the rooftops all around the old town of Prague. And then these armored train lines, basically German trains that were overrun by the Prague insurgents. We'll call them insurgents as a more neutral term. And then were used to help block tanks from getting into the city.
My jsme totiž měli jenom lehké ruční zbraně. Pušky, nějaký ten Panzerfaust a nějaký kulomet a nebylo jich moc, když to Němci proti nám měli obrněnou techniku, dělostřelectvo, letectvo. A když potom udělali nálet na budovu rozhlasu, těžce ji poškodili, tak se i vysílání muselo přemístit jinam. Takže jsme mohli proti nim vlastně jako těžší techniku zasadit pouze pancéřové vlaky. No a na jednom z nich právě ve Vršovicích jsem sloužil.
Prague, Vršovice Station, May 7th, 1945. Yeah, Vršovice and Smíchov were two of the super important train stations for the uprising. And the Žirka train. So that's on the north side of town. The Order Lake train can support it from Michla station. Genuinely, right. I agree. Absolutely terrifying. But they... And... Right, between this and 1968, lots of the more back streets of Prague and a little bit out of the main city still bear tank treads and still show the damages from the wars. Actually remarkable to see.
Ne, protože hlavní nádraží obsadili Němci, tak jsme používali pouze nádraží jednak v Roztokách u Prahy, jednak Smíchovské nádraží a hlavně nádraží Vršovice. Tak je ukažte. tyhle lidi já vůbec neznám. To jsou zřejmě nějaký němečtí starousedlíci. Když já jsem sem v tom 46. přišel, tak už ten odsun probíhal a ty už byli všichni pryč.
I think so, Leander. I think it is a Czech train frame, but was a Nazi vehicle, just like being produced in Prague on Czech tram lines and train lines.
Tak tohle člověka vůbec neznám, ale podle toho, co má na sobě, šlo o jednoho z těch revolučních dobrovolníků, kteří se tady objevili potom v době divokého odsunu, jak se dnes těm excesům, které se děli, říká. Já nechci nic vysvětlovat, ale myslím si, že ta myšlenka odsunu byla správná. Vždyť bychom chtěli vybudovat novou, silnou, vnitřně silnou republiku. Aby bylo jasno, nemám na mysli, že by se mělo to týkat celé německé menšiny, ale většina z nich se proti Československu provinila. To je, myslím, naprosto bez debat. No, já jsem se sem vlastně dostal až, když se prováděl organizovaný odsun Němců, ne ten divoký okamžitě po válce, ale až v roce 1946, kdy tady se toho zúčastnila armáda.
Yeah. Everyone's got an opinion. And, right. The thing, one of the devs was in chat earlier and pointed out, right, no one in this game actually does anything wrong, right? No one commits any crimes except for one person. Or commits any, participates in any atrocities. And yet, there is such a deep fracture around what a bunch of, ultimately, if we're honest, fairly reasonable people did in that time and what their opinions now still are. And there's some very deep wounds in this town, and I think it's fair to say more broadly, right, in Czech national memory. Insist on appropriate military conducts as you carry out your orders as they are given. Individual groups are to meet by 4 p.m. Departure of the transport is at 5. In the crowds are wreaking havoc. I even had a close call with Gestapo. During the Prague uprisings, they were massacring Czechs, yeah? Especially the SS. Fair. So why shouldn't I take a few swipes back? Oversee the housing lament, report back afterwards. Yes, sir. Provisions are in the school. The men have portioned the rations, and they're preparing thermoses of tea. Oops. Isn't it adorable? Square with their baggage. List of crowds. And we find out, you know, same scene from Anna Groschel, but this is Kreisar.
To je přece moje žena, Stutničkova sestra. Když jsem tady byl na vojně, tak jsme se poznali. No, byla to láska jako trám, takže po vojně hned jsme se vzali a mě to táhlo zpátky zase do fabriky samozřejmě, tak šla se mnou do Prahy. No a teprve v 67. roce potom se nám podařilo koupit tuhle chalupu, abychom měli kam jezdit na víkendy a na dovolenou.
Yeah,
no
yes, they did, Leander.
To je asi všechno. Teď už mě omluvte. Mám ještě jinou práci, tak nashledanou.
Uh-huh. Right, utterly... Who else is there? Oh yeah, the graveyard. Can I help with... things that had horrible consequences? Massacres? No, heck, where is it? P... No? There it is. Postal Liberty. Most famous include the Brno Death March, forced expulsion of Germans to the Austrian border, mass murders in Teplice and Metui, and a massacre in Postal Liberty. The tragedy was the subject of an official investigations launched in spring of 1947 in response to rumors of hundreds, if not thousands, of victims allegedly killed and buried in mass graves across Postal Liberty, as well as from several inquiries from abroad. So that's in the area around here. The investigation conducted by a parliamentary commission. And intense harassment, especially those who have been recently relocated. So the arrival of the 1st Czechoslovak Division of its advanced battalion was supposed to get rid of enemy elements. Given that they were mostly frontline fighters and many were Bohemian Czechs, they engaged in attacks with extremist vigor. Statements from witnesses and other evidence compiled in 1947 suggest, however, that the local population generally supported and in some cases possibly assisted the bestiality. Not the best word, we'll admit, but still, problem. Number of interned Germans grew, and the violent excesses became systematic. During the early weeks of June, more than 700 Germans, including women and children, were executed without trial. During exhumations in September 1947, a total of 763 bodies were found in 10 different mass graves. The bodies were never identified, some were reburied, and others cremated. The investigation into the Postal Liberty tragedy failed to bring the perpetrators to justice and was quietly terminated. It was re-established in the 90s after the fall of communism, but it was eventually postponed due to the death of the primary suspects and intense opposition from the residents of Postal Liberty and Žatec, some of whom now lived in the houses and apartments of the murdered or expelled former inhabitants. So, you know, Kreuzer ends up not in the Postal Liberty ones, he's in the second wave of expatriations, but, you know, something that still resulted in probably the death of Jansky and of Anna Gröschel's mother, as did Jan Wilk, arriving just slightly later. But ultimately, right, you don't really get the sense that any of these people are horrible people. Like, Klepal's unlikable, but unlikable in the way that he stands opposed to you doing your job, not is a horrible person. Just... a whole mess of a situation where a bunch of people all thinking they are doing the right thing really ends up just causing a mess. And yeah, right, the game is not making a value judgment. It's just exploring the issue. It's doing really smart historical inquiry on just how nasty the situation was through none of the individual fault of the people we get to talk to. And even though their memory of the events are all radically different, by parsing through all the conflicting memories, we're slowly piecing together an actual inquiry into the place. It's super, super impressive.
Takhle se musím každou chvíli kvůli těm blbým sprayerům omejvat hákový kříže. Nemají trošku ústy k vrchnímu člověku. Jo, ty seš ten důležitý památník.
Shell preservationist.
V hospodě se o tom hodně mluví, o tom tvým průzkumu a o bourání školy. Nedělám to, co ví každý. Škola ale co zpamatuje. Studička to ale přehání s těma svýma vzpomínkama, vystavit, zakonzervovat a pak tam bude zpracovat. Je s tím pěkně neodbytný a všechny lidi s tím uštve. Asi to opravdu je lepší to zbourat a byl by klid. Ale kde pak? Já jsem tady vůbec nežil. Já jsem sem jezdil jenom na prázdniny za dědovou zaměstnou. A ona to taky nebyla vždycky škola. To sloužilo ta budova k různým účelům. Například tam byla kancelář velkostatku a můj děda tam dělal správce. Podívej se, já to mám jenom z vyprávění. Slyšel jsem, že okolo projížděli nějaký německý vojáci a při víceméně náhodné střelbě zabili mladýho Vachka, který se tam motal ve škole na půdě. A okolo té školy se stejně potom všechno motalo. Divoký odsun a všechno. Jenže dneska o tom nechce nikdo mluvit. Každý by to nejradši zamet pěkně pod koberec, ale to já si myslím, že není dobrý, protože to stejně vyjde najevo a bude to ještě horší.
Let's help with this gravestone. Gertrude and Heinrich Hein. Go away. Please. Go away more. Elbow grease. Need a little bit more cleaning material on that. There we go. Set that up, put the flowers back in. Bring that back up, put those on.
Ale ne, to je děda s babičkou. Děda byl Němec, babička byla poněmčená Židovka. A díky dědovi tu válku přečkala celkem v klidu. Za to já jsem s rodičema skončil v Osvětimi, protože táta byl z židovské rodiny. Moc nechybělo. Dědeček byl Němec, ale nacisty nemohl ani cítit. A k tomu ta babička Židovka.
No. If you got an anti-fascist card, you could be exempt from the expulsions, because the expulsion was designed as a counter or as a punishment for supporting Nazism. But they still left.
Takže to neměli jednoduchý, ale naštěstí přežili to celkem bez problémů. Jenže po válce, když všichni mysleli, že už bude klid a pokoj, já jsem přišel z koncentráku, nevěřil jsem svým očím, co se tady děje, ten divoký odsun. všichni Němci do jednoho pytle, lidi druhé kategorie, vyhánění. Nebejt toho, že se jim obstaral potvrzení o antifašismu, tak by skončili ve odsunu.
So what happened?
No tak naštěstí to opadlo všechno dobře, protože mně se podařilo obstarat potvrzení o národní spolehlivosti a k tomu ještě starý Vachek dodal další potvrzení o tom, že to byli antifašisti. No a pravděpodobně taky pomohlo to, že jsem já byl v partaji. Takže já jsem byl vlastně trochu Němec, trochu Žid, trochu Čech a ještě navíc komunista.
It was no easy task arranging an exemption for my grandfather. Things were really tense and no one had the patience for long stories. And no one cared that my parents never returned from Auschwitz. At the very end of the war, my grandparents hid in the barn of a man who had fled from Germany. He had been forcibly deployed there. They helped him return home. As a memento, he gave them this owl, which he carved himself. My grandmother Sarah was Jewish. During the occupation, the Nazis pressured my grandfather to divorce her. Oh, typo there. Oof. Thankfully, they both survived the war. Before 1938, my grandfather was a member of the German Social Democratic Workers' Party in Czechoslovakia. He never voted for the Nazis. And my mother, who was my grandfather's daughter, was taken by the Nazis to Terezin and then to Auschwitz, and never returned. Attached is the last letter she sent. Now, what is the decree? Exceptions to the measures against Germans, Czech Press Office, 8th June 1945. In response to numerous inquiries from national committees and administrative commissions, the Ministry of the Interior reports the following are exempted from the measures taken against the Germans. 1. Those who have returned from concentration camps and prisons if they were there as a result of political or racial oppression. 2. Those who have been proven to have actively supported the Czech nation in its struggle against Nazism. 3. Employees who are absolutely necessary to maintain the operation of a factory. The national committees, administrative commissions, as well as the law enforcement authorities shall provide these persons with protection for their persons and property. According to the program of the Czechoslovak government, all German anti-Nazis and anti-fascists who had actively fought against German fascism before the breakup of the Republic and who continued these activities against German fascist occupation, especially during the war, will be granted Czechoslovak citizenship. The Ministry of Interior requests that such persons of German nationality and their families, excluding those guilty of collaboration, be treated differently from other Germans. These Germans are to enjoy the protection of Czechoslovak state authorities. The national committees will hereby issue official statements of verification to state-trusted Germans, especially communists and socialists, whose membership is recognized, thereby protecting them from interventions against other Germans by the Czechoslovak state or allied powers. Václav Nosek, Minister of Interior. Write a request. The request was successful.
Je Hedvika. Tak to jsem kreslil já. To je Hedvika Rosenbaumová, taky židovka. Moc hodná holka, do té jsem byl zamilovaný. Kvalitní láska. Ani jsem mi nechtěl po prázdninách odjíždět. No, když jsem se příští rok vrátil, tak už jsem ji nenašel. Bůh ví, kam odjeli. No tak to je Rudla. To byl chudák taky pěkný poděs, i když on to teda vůbec neměl jednoduchý. On byl teda z německé rodiny, koncem války přišel do rodiče. On někam utek, takže se odsunul vyhnul. Ale Maleru měl pořád doma. Jednou nohou v kriminálu. Nedělal, byl věčně bez peněz, chlastal. No a já jsem ho jednou vytáhl z pěkného Maléru. hospodě vrhnul na starýho Lachka, že by mu zabil rodiče. To jsem nemoc. Teďko snad je někde nakladně v nějaký ubytovně.
Aha.
Myslíš tohle? Tak toho chlapa vůbec neznám. To muselo být v době, kdy jsem tady nebyl, a toho myslím, že jsem nikdy nepoznal. To vypadá jak nějaký revoluční gardista.
Well, no one's been able to tell us anything about that.
Já měl přece po dědovi klíče od školy. My jsme tam hodně chodili na půdu. Ve dvou, dívali jsme se na hvězdičky, to je krásná romantika. A v té době hodně kreslil a tu kresbu jsme tam tenkrát připíchli. No, Rosenbaumovi ještě před záborem se odstěhovali do vnitrozemí, protože tady v Sudetech už pro ně nebylo bezpečno. A jsem se je pokoušel vypátrat, sehnat ani někde adresu, ale byla mobilizace a jsem musel narukovat a už to nějak nešlo, už na to nebyl čas. A po válce jsem se doslech, že snad odjeli někam do Ameriky. No a když tu posledně byl, tak jsem si ji napsal. Chtěl jsem mu poslat nějaký prachy a pak z toho nějak z toho sešlo.
Jakob Hein, Holocaust survivor sent to Auschwitz tending his grandparents' grave. So, we have cleaned out this town, except one more person. Rudolf Jansky, brother of Anna Grishel, stayed in Czechoslovakia after the war. Kladno, November 23rd, 2001.
Co je? Jo, to jsem já. Co chcete? To jsou přece moje fotky. Vy jste to vzali, vy jste se mě hrabali ve věcech. Tak pojďte dál.
Just have a couple questions.
Tak co?
Okay.
To je táta, máma a Anna.
Aw.
To jsem já. Ani nevím, kdo to tenkrát fotil.
And who is this? This is the big question.
To je jeden z těch, co přišli po válce do naší vesnice zatýkat Němce a kolaboranty. Já jsem ho neznal. V naší vesnice určitě nebyl. Ale určitě přitáhl s těma ostatníma. Ale pamatuju si ho dobře. Když začali gardisté zatýkat Němce, tak je dávali do školy. Byl tam strašný nepořádek a svinčík, tak jsem si přinesl fotoaparát, že to všechno natočím. A jeden takovej vysoký dlouhán, teda voják to určitě nebyl, se po mně ohnál a zařval, abych mu ten foťák dal. Jenomže pak jsem jednu schytal, ještě mi z toho týden brněla hlava, ale podařilo se mě zdrhnout.
Yep. So our granddad decked a kid. Volksschule. I can't develop photos without a developer, but I think I can make my own. Neat.
Nikdy jsem si ty poměry nepamatoval. Otec vždycky říkal, že se neumím koncentrovat.
So we need a liter of water, 2 grams of methyl, 100 grams of anhydrous sodium sulfide, 5 grams of hydroquinone, and 2 grams of borax.
Sehnat chemikálie nebylo jen tak. všechny potřebné věci mi přinesl otec ze školní laboratoře. Prý to chybět nikomu nebude.
Aw. We need 5 grams of this. 3, a 1, and a 1. Grab that, and then I've measured out the rest of it already, so...
Vývojka mi došla, když jsem vyvolával fotky z maminčiných narození. Ani na jedné fotce se nikdo nesmál. Snad jenom ano.
Oh.
Film se musel dát do vývojnice a usušit. To čekání jsem nesnášel.
Oof.
Nejraději už bych byl ve fotokomoře.
Use the red light before starting. There we go. So, 10 seconds in there, then into there, then into there.
To bylo naposledy, co jsem vyvolával fotky. To jsem na letech, kdy nevěděl.
There, and then into there. And in the end?
Tenhle ten pomáhal odvést moje rodiče. Nikdy jsem je pak už neviděl.
Zabil je. Moje bába, tedy jako matka mý matky, se po nich ptala, ale nezjistila nic. Akorát jí řekli, že jsou nezvěstní. Ale já vím dobře, kde jsou ty hroby a kde je zakopali. Jo.
Yeah.
Moje maminka byla Češka.
Yeah.
No. Jsme za malá s mámou mluvili jenom česky. Ale pak přišel Hitler a otec to zakázal. Abychom prý vypadali jako opravdoví Němci. No, on byl taky v té jejich straně. Když jsem promluvil česky, tak mě táta seřezal. Tak jsem utíkal na půdu a jsem měl taky schovaných pár českých knih, aby je táta nenašel. Mama se ho bála. Pak ji stejně zabili jako Němku.
Here they come, give him hell. Jansky should be hanged, he turned in Klepal to the Germans. They killed my son. For shame. There's the young Jansky, he's a German too, get him. No. That's our grandfather.
Jsem se vrátil domů, tak jsem zjistil, že odvedli jí mámu. Vůbec nikdo se jí nezastal. Tak jsem to chtěl tomu Vachkovi vrátit, teda po letech v hospodě, ale roztrhli nás od sebe. Já jsem do Německa nechtěl. Já jsem chtěl zůstat tady.
Fair.
Měl jsem českou bábu, tak jsem utekl za ní. Že tam mě za chvíli nezvládala, tak mě dali do ústavu. Tam jsem taky několikrát utíkal. No. A pak mě dali do dolů. Vykopal uhlí jako krtek. Se přímo nesnášel. Pak mě říkali, že jsem příživník, tak mě dali do jedné fabriky nákladně. A pak jsem procházel přímožným. Nejlíp mi bylo, když jsem dělal nočního vrátnýho. Teď mám důchod a je pokoj. Chlapi v hospodě mi říkali, ať to zkusím. Jenže já jsem vždycky přišel na národní výbor Tam seděla nějaká pěstěná kráva a tam mě někam poslala. Tak jsem tam šel. Tam mě zase poslali někam dál, někam úplně jinam. Pak mi zase poslali úplně zpátky a začal jsem tam, kde jsem vůbec neměl být. Tak jsem se vždycky tak rozštýlil, že mě vyvedli ven, no. Tak jsem si říkal, že se na to vykašlu. Oni jsou tam a já jsem tady. Oni jsou Němci.
No.
Co? Z Německa. Po tolika letech. Aby se mě snad nelekl. Tak jo. Německy snad ještě něco zvládnu. A kolik jí vlastně může být let? Počkejte, já se jenom trochu tohle...
Aww. I'm super invested. So, chat, now we need to make a choice. Given everything we've seen, on the basis of a local investigation, I recommend the school building to be protected. On the basis of a local investigation, I recommend the demolition of school building be permitted. The school building is not the only memory site, right? This is not an easy choice. The town square in front of the school is important. The barn, where the poor folks on the death march that were killed by the SS, is important. Most people in this town don't want it. Studnička does, but it doesn't seem like anyone else... It doesn't seem like anyone else wants this to be a heritage site. Klepel doesn't. The mayor doesn't necessarily want the building destroyed, but thinks Studnička's a fool. Studnička's brother-in-law, Kreitzer, doesn't think it should go through. Mr. Hein doesn't want it. Grishel does, but she's from Germany. Grishel does, and she was born, and her family lived there, so the only people who seem to want it are the people who have something resembling fond memories of the place. But yeah, right? Most people either don't care or are actively opposed. And yet, it was built in the 1920s, and then turned into a Czech school and kindergarten, and then a German school and Hitler Youth site, and then a Red Army barracks, and a deportation site, and the administrative office for the Communist Party and the collectivization efforts. And yet, this is a monument. Something built by and for living people. In a rural village, in a tiny town, out by Žatec. Nowhere close, I mean, in the same district as the massacre sites at Postolopertny, and in Žatec itself, but not a village emblematic of 100 villages in the Sudetenland. So should this one school building be preserved? Does the fact that it bore witness to these events and was actively used from that mean that it should become a heritage site? Is that enough? Not going to attract a lot of visitors. It's not really all that special within the confines of the town itself. Town square, barn, the farms. Honestly though, you would still say yes. There is a poll up. Make sure to vote in it. We've got to make a choice. Yes or no? Reminder, if you're lurking, go vote. We've got currently 3 votes for no, 1 vote for yes. Okay, well the poll is technically up for a lot longer. We're gonna close it soon, so get those in. Leaning very hard to demolition. Uh-huh. There should be a plaque or something else. I agree. A plaque would be great, but we don't get that choice. Yes, it gets preserved. No, it doesn't. That's it. I think then we'll close the poll, Riley. The demolition of the school building be permitted. And with that, we end the game. That's it. Rudolph and his sister finally met after 55 years. They remained in close contact until Rudolph's death. There's your happy ending, chat. Jan Vilk was evicted into public housing. The school was demolished and in its place Klepal built his office. Vilk lived in the school. He didn't care one way or the other, but he lived in it. But yes, they got their happy ending. So, Vít, Lukáš, Andrei, Richard. Amazing game. Everyone at Charles Games, y'all did amazing work. Honestly, I'm of the opinion that this game is super instructive as to how an educational game can be effective. Right? A lot of historical games don't actually try to be educational. That's not kind of their goal, their job. They're using it as a set piece to have fun in. And there's this kind of meme that goes around of, educational games being, crappy school-based edutainment. And to Yaroslav, Jiří, Prokop, Ivo, Stanislav, Petr, Pavlina, Katarzyna, Michaela, Jana, Adela, and Jan, and all of these institutes, all of these institutes that helped with it. Amazing. Akademii Věd České republiky, Ministerstvo kultury, Národní archiv, Národní filmní archiv, etc. And if we go continue, we don't actually have anything else to do, but if you missed anything, you can go back and find it. Go back and find them. The forest where he hid, Rosenbaum's house, fled to America, the shed here, the pub. Oh! We can rewatch the videos as flashbacks, where we almost hit Rudolph, oops, and yeah. Right? It's super effective as education, and right, where something like Valiant Hearts, which is also a really fabulous educational game, but feels in some ways a bit, I guess, a bit more gamey, right? And so ends up feeling more distant from World War I and what the experience in the trenches was like, with a little bit of an adventuresome plot and 2D mechanics and animation style, and just being super heavily stylized with then archival things that you can find in the world. By making a historical inquiry as a heritage officer the whole point, making that the centerpiece of the village, we get over 100 years of history, really. I mean, okay, this is from 1928, but ultimately going back to the establishment of Czechoslovakia, where her father got gifted some of the land in the breakup of the landed aristocracy of before then. There's just all the way through to the present and people's memories now, and the ways that the past still impacts us. It's so good. Right, it doesn't try and make you feel like you're part of the time period. You're not. You're 50 years later. But then uses the act of historical inquiry as a gameplay mechanic. Right? Fieldwork. That's what we did. We just did a bunch of fieldwork to tell us about the time period. And so it's incredibly well executed, both on a teaching about a historical time period and about the methods of doing history. And by forcing you to make the choice as to whether this building right here... Oh, I'm still missing a thing, somehow. Don't know where it is, but... Right. There is still something methodological and on a meta level, right? The question of what histories are worth turning into monuments, and I guess to oversimplify dramatically, what histories are worth saving. The past is too big to tell everything, so what histories are worth saving and worth turning into monuments? Versus which ones should be left in small archives, collections of documents, little tiny remains. As the town moves on slowly, sort of. So, I am incredibly impressed with this game. This might be one of the best historical games in a very literalist sense of that term, right? You know, I'm a big fan of thinking that, like, most games are in some way historical, but there are dichotomies that just... Any attempt to set up dichotomies of what is and isn't historical will tend to fall apart at some point. But in the most literal sense of historical game, of a game set in the past, about the past, even though the past it is set in and the past it is about are not the same past, this is about real events, derived from archival material, supported with archival material, and so is in the most literal, narrow sense of the term, a historical game. And yeah, I think it's the best one I've ever played. Straight up, top tier historical game. So, go support Charles Games. Go get this game for yourself. It is amazing. I love it to bits. And yeah, chat, do you have any final thoughts here? Well, apart from good game, do you like? That's my final thought. Good game, I like it. Sweet. Oh, one other thing. If you like this game, tell other people about it, and tell other people about the stream too. If they're on the fence, because we covered like 90-something% of the content in the game. So, yeah. Spread the word. And if you haven't yet, make sure you're followed, subscribed to the channel, because obviously coming up we've got some big stuff. Next weekend. I think we set the date. So 1 week from today, actually, is going to be the Assassin's Creed Valhalla Siege of Paris stream. Oh, to Hedness, you hadn't actually followed yet. Well, thank you for that. So there's a bunch of cool stuff coming down the pipeline, so spread the word. Tell people about the stream, because honestly, right, I want to be able to show off cool games like this to more people, and spreading the word is the best way to make that happen. And, you know, get people to support the game. And with that then, I hope you all have a good rest of your weekend. We're going to call it here. Obviously, a bit of a short stream. And obviously there's also a lot in here to read if you want to learn more about the period. This is all well done, based on archival material accounts of what the heck is going on. So, good resource, good game, good developers, go support them. That's the final thought. Cool, so I will see you guys on the next stream, and I hope you all have a good rest of your weekend. Bye.